Всем привет. Hello, good evening. This is Mett Tомпсон, and welcome to English You Can Use. This is the program where you learn English that you actually can use today. Thanks for joining us on a really, really cold evening here in Yekaterinburg and across the Urals. But I'm glad maybe you can learn something new on this, as I said, very frigid, cold night, the coldest night I've seen here in my 3 years in Russia. If you're joining us for the first time or for the third time or the fifth time or the 10th time, please say hello. We had some technical difficulties. I don't think this is going out to people on Kontakti, so I apologize for that. So as I usually remind everybody, if you like this, follow us, ring the bell in YouTube, and also follow us on Instagram so that more people can learn English and speak and learn more natural English like Americans speak. And tonight we have a special guest, Чадом Дандасом. He's an author from the great state of Montana. He's going to talk to us about his writing, about his books, and a little bit about MMA. Here we have a few people. Hello, Anastasia. But first, I'm going to give you a little bit something different today, a word of the day. And I hope that you are writing this down. I hope that you, if you don't like to write things down, remember it in your mind. This is a phrase that many Americans use. We use this without thinking, but the other day I thought it's not very, doesn't make a lot of sense. So the word of the day is to catch a break. To catch a break. And you probably know the word to catch, and you probably know the word break, right? So if you have a guess of what this means, if you're really advanced, tell me in the comments or right on here. I'll put on the screen what it means to catch a break. I'm going to put it up here. Let's see. It means to get lucky, or to be lucky, or to have luck come to you. So for an example, usually we use this in a negative context, like everything that goes wrong does go wrong, like at the beginning here when I can't connect to the internet properly. We would say, I can't catch a break. Or maybe if I'm hoping for something in the future, I would say, I just wish I could catch a break. Nikita says to relax, maybe. That's the right, it's kind of in the ballpark. I'm using another idiomatic phrase there. So catch a break is something you should learn. It's in literature, it's in movies, and it's an everyday speech among Americans. And in general, Americans have a pretty positive outlook on life, so they usually believe that they're going to catch a break at any point, at any moment. Entrepreneurs use it a lot. Most anybody. So remember that. To catch a break. Catch a break is to get lucky. All right. So let's go with this, just a little short presentation about slang that people use on the West Coast. And I think the United States is so integrated that many people will use the same vocabulary more or less. But there are maybe a few phrases or a few words that people in Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Montana, Idaho, this part of the country use more than they do in the East Coast. But maybe I'll ask Chad when he's on if he agrees or disagrees with these words. So the term back east. I did not realize this till I moved to the East Coast, Washington, D.C., that nobody says that. But I definitely did when I was growing up. We would say, he lives back east. Or, yeah, he went back east for a trip. Back east simply means to the East Coast, to the eastern part of the United States. The East Coast, people on the East Coast might say out west as kind of the similar phrase. So there's out west and then there's back east. And maybe that has to do with the migration of Americans from the East Coast to the West Coast. So I'm not sure. But eastern part of the U.S., Восточный регион США, that's what they're talking about. Now, this is a super, super duper slang term. I would not use this with your teacher, or if you're a teacher, I don't know if I would use this with your students, but it's the term poppin', and I think people in California use this. So this party is poppin', or that outfit is poppin'. And they're not talking about something that pops up or popcorn. They're talking about something that's cool, popular, or fresh. So if you hear this on television, just know that's what they're saying. It's cool. A lot of pop stars use this. I'm sure musicians use it as well. Next one, sketchy. I didn't realize, I looked this up, and it was in an article that said this was used more on the West Coast than the East Coast, but maybe it's not. But sketchy is definitely a slang term used by many Americans. We have a question about visas, but we're not going to answer visas during this time. If you have a question, you can email our consul about that. But sketchy means to be dishonest, or something that's disreputable or not reputable. I think an example would say, that guy standing on the street corner with a big jacket and a hooded hat, big hat, he looks sketchy. Maybe he's not doing something he's supposed to. I don't know, maybe an email you get with maybe some grammatical mistakes or misspellings, and it comes from a source you don't know. That would be, this email looks sketchy to me. It doesn't look like it's trustworthy. So definitely a word you can use in everyday. Hopefully you're not using it too much. You're not encountering sketchy people or sketchy things often, but it's a very easy word to say. Here is a good one for sports, but it can be used for any performance, and that's the word clutch. To be clutch, or that is clutch, is something I think a lot of Americans use. It means to do something positive at just the right time. So let's put this in terms of soccer or европейский football for you. When somebody scores a goal in the last minute, they would say that was a clutch play, or that was a clutch move, or he is clutch. So again, this is a super simple word that you can remember and associate with sports, or maybe that performance by that singer was really clutch. She came through when she really needed it, and she won an award, or she won over the crowd. So very easy word. And lastly, to bail as a verb. There's the verb to bail out water, but this is not what we're talking about. To bail means to leave, or possibly to skip something. So for example, I'm super hungry. I don't really want a class, so I'm going to bail on class. Now that's not something good, or I'm not feeling really well today. I don't want to go to work, so I'm going to bail. Or this party is lame. I'm going to bail and go home. Make sense? To bail. So while you're watching this, write down some of these words. I've even put in the Russian. Покинуть. I would say уйти without место. Покинуть место, but to leave a place, or to leave somewhere. Уйти, or уходить is probably the best. All right, everybody's pretty quiet tonight. Wow. So if you have a comment or question, please leave it in the comments. I'll answer any question you want, except for visas, because we're not talking about visas. And the answer is, right now, you can't really get visas. So let's go on to a little translation before we get to Чадом Дандасом, who is our guest. This is, let me put up on the screen. I believe it's a checkoff short story. Papal pod loshit. Papal pod loshit. I want to know if any of you can translate that into English. Papal pod loshit. And I'll ask Chad too when he comes on if he knew this one. It's pretty famous, I think. I have not read it, but I recognize the title in English. So if anybody can get this, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds, because I here am in the future, 15 seconds in the future during the live stream. Elias says Tabel Svalit. That is correct. Yes, I'll put that on. But I think that's a real slang term. So I was told by my colleague not to say it, but you're right actually. Get under the horse. That's a literal translation. Got under the horse, Elsa. It's okay. We got a couple people. Anybody else? And Natalia is the winner. Got hit by the horse. Fall down before house. I think Alexei means horse, not house. Yeah, so I'm going to put up the answer here. Oops, where is it? Hit by a horse. That's the closest translation. And of course, translations are not exact. They're interpretations to try to get the meaning. Natalie says, run over the horse. Well, I think that's pretty close. Hit by the horse, run over the horse. So good. This is really hard, but I think it's kind of a fun way to challenge how you think in Russian and in English. So with that, let's bring on our guest, Chad. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on, Matt.
And you're joining us from Missoula, where it is really early. It's 7:15, 7:18 in the morning.
That's right. My children just woke up. I can hear them playing in the next room. I hope that you all cannot hear them, but if you can, that's just a little bit of what life is like here for me.
That's, I think, the way it is for many people with the pandemic right now. So Chad, I think if our audience doesn't know, I think they do. We here in Russia think about Montana as something similar to Siberia, a very big open space, cowboys, just not a lot of people. What couple words or phrase describes Montana for you? Because you're a native there. You were born and raised, or you raised there. I know that.
Yeah, that's a great question. It can be hard to try to figure out just one word to describe the place where you live or the place where you have lived most of your life. So if I can cheat a little bit, I'm going to go with two words.
Sure.
The first word that I would choose would be beautiful, because Montana is part of the western United States, which is known for its wide open spaces and mountains, rivers, national parks, lots natural beauty. So Montana is definitely known for its natural surroundings. It's called Big Sky Country in the western part of the United States just because of its wonderful natural surroundings. I would also say a word I would choose might be independent, just because Montana is a place that has a reputation for people who consider themselves to be very independent. They like to do things on their own. They like to make up their own minds about various issues and how they're going to live their lives. So the two words that I would choose would be beautiful, just to describe what you see around you every day in this state. And I'd also say independent, just because the people around here seem to like to do things on their own.
I agree with you. I went to school at the University of Montana and lived 4 years in Missoula, and I think I agree with Chad on that. We have Alexei saying hello to Cook City. I guess he's been to Cook City. You're quite a ways away from Cook City, but That's interesting. We have a connection from way out here to Montana. How cold is
Yeah,
it
that's
there
true.
today? That's from Natalie.
You know what? It's not supposed to be that cold today. It's about 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, but it's actually warmed up quite a bit this week from how it has been for most of February. It's been a pretty strange winter here in Montana. It's been very warm for most of what we would normally consider the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then in February, it suddenly got very cold. We got a huge cold snap that moved through. So there have been blizzards and a lot more snow this month than we got earlier in the winter. And the previous 2 weeks, it's been about negative 20, negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So very cold. We've been under winter storm warnings from the National Weather Service. But this week it's supposed to be a little bit more mild or a little bit warmer. It's supposed to be 35 to 40 degrees.
Wow.
And so now all the snow is melting. And so it's going to be a lot of slush, a lot of water all over the place out there today.
For us, 35 Fahrenheit's, I think, +2 or 3 Celsius. So pretty warm. Out here, -20, I've learned Russians will say this phrase, they'll say, normalna, это нормально. That means it's just, that's just the way it is always. It's normal. People have bigger tolerance, I think, for cold weather, although Montanans do too. So let's talk about your two books. You are a relatively young author. You've had two books that have done fairly well. You had the first one was Champion of the World, which was notable across the country and it got a lot of great reviews. And then you just finished, you released The Blaze last year, I believe, which also just was an honor selection for the Montana Book Award. And I wanted to ask you, what role does the setting of Montana play in your books, and how important is that to the story you're telling?
For me, the setting is very important for my books. Both of them are primarily set in Montana. And so I like to think of the state of Montana almost like an additional character in the books because the setting affects the characters so much. It's hard to be in a place as big and as wild as Montana without the natural surroundings having some effect on you, whether that be positive or whether it be negative. So I try to use the settings of Montana as much as I can, either just by way of description in the book or creating problems for the characters to have to overcome and have to deal with. And I really want my books, when people read them in English, I want my books to feel indicative of Montana, or I want them to represent Montana in a way so that when people in other places read them, they have a little bit of an understanding of what Montana is like, and how the people here are, and what our relationship is with nature and with each other. The settings in the book as much as I can to convey a sense, what we call in English a sense of place, which basically just means that you understand what it's like to be in a place and to feel the feelings and to understand the people. So I try to use the setting of Montana to great effect in my books, and I think I've been successful. So I've tried to use a lot of descriptions of Montana and a lot of problems that being in a wild place can cause to the characters. So I try to use Montana as a character in my books quite a bit.
So speaking of that, the Champion of the World I read a few years ago, and I really liked it. And now it's in the Latvian National Library. I donated it to them, so I don't have it. But I wanted to say that I normally probably would not read something about professional wrestling, or he was a professional wrestler. But that environment and the world you created was really captivating and really interesting. And I recommend it to anybody who can find it and order it here in Russia. But that leads me to you know a lot about professional wrestling. You know a lot about MMA, mixed martial arts. You have a podcast called The Co-Main Event. You've had it for almost a decade now. And I know that MMA is pretty popular here in Russia. But how do you, when you talk about MMA fighters, how do you see Russian fighters? How do you think most Americans see the Russian fighters? Do they know them well, or what is their impression?
Yeah, just speaking about the history of mixed martial arts, Russian fighters have had a big impact on that sport throughout its history. One of the best fighters of all time is a Russian fighter by the name of Fedora Emelianenko. He's from a place called Stary Oskol. I think I said that right. In Russia, and he's sort of regarded as one of the pioneers of the sport. He came along early in the sport's history and was very good, won championships, won a lot of fights, and is regarded as one of the greatest of all time. And there have been a lot of high-profile Russian fighters over the history of MMA. People like Fedor Emelianenko, and then more recently, Hабиба Nurmagomedova, who was a champion in the biggest MMA organization in the world, the UFC. He was their lightweight champion at 155 pounds and was very successful over a long period of time, kind of using his sambo grappling background to great effect. And it was actually undefeated as a professional. No one ever beat him. He retired late last year, just recently, with a record of 29-0. And so he says that he's done fighting, but the UFC doesn't really want to let him walk away from the sport. They don't really want to let him lose because he's a pretty big star for them and he makes them a lot of money. So they're trying to convince him to come back and have some more fights. And right now, one of the big questions in the sport is what Hабиба Nurmagomedova will do, if he will come back to the sport or if he will stay retired, because he, as in his own words, like made a promise to his mother that he would be done fighting. And so he wants to stick to that.
He's like 30 or early 30s.
Yeah, he's in his 30s and has been around the sport for a long time. His father actually just died from COVID-19 complications last year. And his father had been a person who had a big impact on Habib's life and had been his wrestling coach early in his life and had been involved throughout his mixed martial arts career. So that was a very sad thing for their family and had a big impact on Habib himself. And I think his desire to either keep fighting or to retire. And he kind of made a promise to his mother that he wouldn't keep fighting, that he would be, I think, at home more, and he would be, or around the house, have more time for family. And so far it seems like he is going to dedicate himself to that and be true to that promise that he made his mother. But it's also kind of notorious in the sport that people retire and then they come back.
Yeah. The comeback.
If that'll be, yeah.
Absolutely.
But just to answer your original question, like in mixed martial arts, Russian fighters are viewed as being very talented. A lot of them come from a wrestling base, and they, by and large, they're viewed as very good fighters. And there are a lot of young up and coming athletes from Russia who are making their way through the sport now. So I think that there are probably more young, talented MMA fighters from Russia than almost anywhere else in the world. So it's a big talent base for the sport.
Just a reminder, everybody, if you have a question for Chad, please leave it in the comments section and we'll answer it to you right here on the air. So I want to go back to writing. I know you have a journalism background. I'm sure you've did creative writing in the past, what advice would you give to somebody, just one very simple tip about how to improve their writing, that you found that you got better over time by doing?
Yeah. I would say two things. First of all, it's obviously very difficult to write in a second language. For many of us, it can be very difficult to write even in one language. So especially for people who are trying to not only learn to speak a new language but also to write in it, I understand that that can be very difficult. And I think no matter what language you are trying to learn to write in, the two things that I think help the most are both very simple. First of all, just to try to write a lot, to get as much practice as you can writing, and writing in different styles, writing both for fun and also writing uh, in your professional life, right, being able to write a professional letter or email uh, is important and can provide good practice. But just, writing messages to your friends, writing practice, whether it be essays or poems or fiction or stories, whatever it is that you like to write. Obviously, the more practice you get, the better you are going to be at it. The other thing I would say is that the thing that I find helps my own writing the most is that I try to read a lot. Um, and the two affect each other clearly, but I think a lot of times people underestimate how much you learn and absorb just from reading. And so not only just writing and getting that active practice, but I think reading helps train your mind to know how to write. You can see techniques that other writers are using, and try to adopt those into your own writing. So I would say they're almost equally important to both try to write a lot, but also to read as much as you can, just to keep that part of your brain engaged and active, and to try to learn in a slightly more passive way than
Hmm.
just doing it yourself.
So you hear it, very, very simple: write more and read more.
Yeah. Well, but it sounds simple, but I guess in daily life we're all busy. It
Yeah.
can be hard to make time to read, but especially for a person like me, where you could almost consider it part of the job. I do have to try to make time in my life to make sure I'm reading things, because otherwise it's easy to just let that part go, and to miss out on a lot of those reading opportunities.
That's true. Alexa asks, have you been to Yellowstone during the winter?
Yeah, I actually have. The place where I live, Missoula, is kind of equally distant from Yellowstone National Park to the south and Glacier National Park to the north. So we're pretty lucky in that regard to be so close to both of those national parks.
Hmm.
So I have been to Yellowstone Park during the winter, not for a long time, but it's kind of an incredible place. It's almost unlike anywhere else that I've ever been, just because it has such unique natural phenomenon, natural wonders that happen there. With uh, steam and hot lava kind of bubbling up through the ground, and geysers spraying uh, steam and water into the sky. So yeah, it's also kind of cool to go there uh, in the winter, just because there can be less people there. So you might, it's usually very, very crowded. Uh,
Yeah.
so if you go in the winter, it can be a little bit better to, a little bit easier to get around.
Yeah, I was just Yellowstone. I recall, I think, is the first national park ever in the United States, and it's very popular. And I went in the summer, and there were a lot of people. All right, we have two questions here. Natalie says, "Who are the main heroes of your books?" I would say we'll have to say books. And what is the most striking abstract of the book? Would you read out that episode for us, please? I think we posted something earlier today, so you can read the opening of Champion of the World. But is there something from the Blaze? Maybe you could talk about just the basic plot or the main character.
Sure. The Blaze is a mystery, so it focuses on a young American soldier who is coming back from the war in the Middle East, and he returns to Montana, to his hometown, but he has suffered an injury to his brain. He has suffered a traumatic brain injury during an explosion in the war and has lost a lot of his long-term memory. And so he doesn't retain a lot of memories from his childhood. And so it's a strange experience for him to return to his hometown. And he's going about this business to try to figure out where he's, kind of where he's from and what his life was like as a child, because he doesn't remember any of that stuff. And then while he's doing that, he stumbles upon a fire that causes a bigger mystery in his life, and he has to not only kind of explore his own past to try to figure out where he's from, but he has to also try to solve this mystery that is happening in real time in the present. So there's kind of two mysteries in The Blaze. One about where this character, whose name is Matthew, actually, where he comes from, and also what is going on in the present that is so mysterious.
I think I'll probably buy it this week on Kindle because I've wanted to read it for quite some time. So
I appreciate that.
thank you. Got quite a few other questions here. Who is your favorite Russian writer? Do you have a famous favorite Russian writer?
I would probably say Vladimir Nabokov, even though he's probably kind of a cliched choice as a favorite Russian writer, but a guy who was born in Russia and spent a lot of his life in different parts of Europe, but one of the, a writer who's been very influential throughout the 20th century and kind of establishing the modern style of novels and kind of bringing some of literature into the modern era and doing a lot of things that other people have imitated and copied over the years. So I would say I'm a pretty big fan of Nabokov.
No, he's very popular here too. I've met many people like him. Can you take a bath in the hot springs there? I'm going to say she's asking about Montana in general, maybe Yellowstone, but I know there are hot springs in Montana.
Sure. You would not want to take a bath in a lot of the hot springs in Yellowstone because they're too hot. People end up injuring themselves if they try to go in there in Yellowstone National Park. But there are a lot of natural hot springs in Montana where you can go and you can swim or bathe or whatever you want to do. They're kind of all over the state, and a lot of them are very popular attractions. So especially when it's cold outside, it can be a good thing to do.
Trying to remember the one that's up Lolo,
Jerry Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
And Sergey asks a very important question. What's the most popular beer in the state?
You know what? Montana is actually known as a big beer producer these days because as craft beer and small breweries become more popular throughout the United States, Montana has a lot of really small breweries. It's kind of like every little town will have at least one brewery or sometimes 2 and 3. And the place where I live in Missoula, I believe there's like 10 breweries now. So Montana is actually largest beer states now. And so beer is very popular, and a lot of the different beers are very popular. My personal favorite right now is a brewery that's in a town called Bozeman, which is about a 3-hour drive from where I live, but you can get their beers in the supermarkets here. And it's called Mountains Walking Brewery, and they make a bunch of really tasty beer.
One of the favorite names, this is kind of funny, from Big Sky Brewery is the famous Moose Drool beer.
Yeah.
And our audience, I'm telling you that moose, you know what a moose is. It's like a big deer, a big deer. Look it up if you don't know. Moose, moose. And the beer's name is Moose Drool. And drool is that stuff that comes out of an animal's mouth or people's mouth sometimes too, like a dog. And that's the name of the beer, but it's very popular and quite good. So, well, Chad, I think we've run out of time, but thanks so much for spending your early morning with us and telling us a little bit more about Montana and culture out west, because we know, I think you would agree, Montana is much different from New York City or Chicago or Washington, which most people in Europe know. They know about New York, they know about the East Coast, but they don't know as much about the West Coast. And there is a definite culture there, and it's definitely distinct and unique, and just as interesting as the other places in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again, Matt, for having me on. It was very interesting and fun for me to talk to everybody over there. I hope that we kept it popping.
We kept it popping. Very good. So remember, word of the day, poppin', and to catch a break. Try to remember that for your everyday speech. Hopefully you will catch a break. Hopefully we will catch a break and it will get warmer here in the next few days in the Urals. And we hope one day you can maybe visit Russia and meet the wonderful people they have out here and the wonderful culture they have out in this region, this part of Russia. So
yeah, that would be very fun.
All right. Well, take care. Thank you very much, everyone. That's our program for tonight. Thank you for your comments. I'm going to put up here, Ethan and Anastasia. Keep spreading the word about this program. Pass it to people you think would like it or would enjoy it. We're here to help. I hope we can do some in-person events in the near future when the pandemic comes to an end. So until then, though, next week our guest will be my boss, Amy Sturrow, the Consul General, and we want you to come and with as many questions as possible. This is your chance to ask her. So she will be here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. We can talk about literature. She used to teach literature. We can talk about some foreign policy issues. We can talk about anything else that you would like to. And I got a bunch of questions now, so I'm going to answer them really quick. Silly question: is a moose and a buck a different species? Yes, a buck is a male deer. A moose is los, like really, really big. So thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Anastasia. And we'll see you next week at the same time. Take care.